Ní hebhneas gan an chláán dáil, ní conairt bheile neachlis, a chláán de bear sa groinne go riamh gach gunne ceteach.
In 1970, the 7th Lord McDonald died, leaving massive estate duties and other debts. In order to pay them off, his heir, the present Baron, had to sell his estate in Skye. As it was the last of the original clan lands still owned by one of the chiefs, a number of eminent clansmen, including the late Donald J. McDonald of Castleton, devised a scheme whereby members of the clan could buy the estate to preserve it as a focal point. Enough money was raised to buy the southern part of the estate, including Armadale Castle. This was the beginning of the Clandonald Land Trust and the Clandonald Visitor Centre. The rest, as they say, is history. First time I came to Armadale, it was a miserable wet day. I mean, the rain was coming down in sheets. They had a front gate, and to walk through the wooden gate, we walked through the wooden gate, and as I walked up the driveway, I knew that it was a beautiful place, but it had been neglected for so long. I mean, rhododendron, so thick that you really could hardly get through it. All the way up the driveway, almost, in some spots almost touching. People had been working here, basically maybe for a year or 2 years, but it was only one man. and he just wasn't able to make a lot of progress. I'm not a garden designer, but I had this feeling about I can do better than this. When I walked away and considered to myself, I know I can do something here. And went back to America, of course, accepted the job and came over and set about doing something here. Almost 30 years on since I came here, and it's just unbelievable, the changes. Well, the castle was still standing, but there was no roof on any part of it. I mean, it was just, well, rotten timbers, and the wall heads were starting to go, and the towers had been considered dangerous by Corps of Engineers. Around it was this wooden fence, keeping people away from it. And I thought, well, we can't live with this. People going up the driveway in danger, keep out. You know, that's not what you want to see. So that's why we got Jeffrey Jarvis, the Boys Jarvis Partnership, to design something that could reduce the unsafe part to a ruin and allow people to get in and out. And that's why we had to bring the towers down about 1/3 of their height. Inside the staircase that led up to the upper floors, we closed off so that people could get up onto a platform. And we just started the planting and let nature take its course. And one thing, things grow here. As we started our development plans, it became obvious that probably the first building we have to do something with was the stables, because it sits by the side of the road, and it was the first thing that the visitors see. And if they come to a building that's run down and not inviting, then they may just keep going. So we thought if we made that our arrival point, where we could have a restaurant, gift shop, 2 self-catering flats above, that was the goal. We had Jeffrey Jarvis of the Boys Jarvis Partnership design the building for us, and we built an extension in the back in what was the former dungstead of the stables, became the new restaurant. And the good thing about it is that here we are 25 years on nearly, and it looks as good as it did the first day we completed it. It was an interesting story. When we were building the stables and correcting the obvious 100,000 faults in it, I used to come down at night and look to see what work had been accomplished during the day. I was a project manager. There was a scaffolding inside what we call now the baronial hall, and I came down and ducked under the scaffolding, but I thought I heard a noise. Now there was ladders up, so I thought that there's somebody up there. So I quietly climbed the stairs, and I got to the top, and here was one of the local crofters who was working on the site. He was a carpenter. Him and his wife were standing in the very top of the scaffolding, and he was showing her the work that he had accomplished and he had finished. And he was telling her that tomorrow this is going to get covered with plaster. And I thought that was a lovely story. He was so proud of the work that he'd done before it was covered up. He brought his wife all the way up these ladders to see it. Once the area was plastered, it was quite a unique job with a lovely rose in the middle of it, of thistles, and we entered it for a Plasterers Award, which over here they call the Placerers Award, and it won. Maybe because there was no other person in Scotland doing plastering that year, but we did win the Plasterers Award. The stables now host 100,000, possibly more a year, as far as visitor numbers are concerned. Because sometimes people come in, it's the first port of call they make, they use the toilet, they go and have a cup of tea, then they go through the gardens, they walk around, and they come back for a second time and have lunch, use the toilets, use the gift shop. So you really, in reality, can count them twice. So I would say it's well over 100,000 a year are using the stables. As ever, the Glencoe Foundation, Inc. was very much responsible for the building of the stables. They contributed a large sum for that. Also, the Highland and Island Development Board contributed a fairly large sum too, And the Countryside Commission from Scotland provided money for things like toilets, because that's one of the things that they were funding at that particular time. All in all, from the drawing to completion, it was over a year and a half. And in 1984, we opened the stables, and it was opened by Douglas McDonald, who at that time was the chairman of the Clandonald Land Trust and also chairman of John Mingus and Company. And he opened it to an audience of maybe 250, 300. On the opening day, we had the Queen's Own Highlanders, which we had brought over from Ireland, where they were based, to play, because the Queen's Own Highlanders were the Highland Regiment. And they had a full pipe band, and they led us up the driveway and performed a tattoo in front of the castle in the afternoon. Ellis MacDonald took the salute. Perfect weather. And after that, we went down to the stables and had a meal. And later on, we went back up the driveway again and into a marquee where Alistair Gillis, a famous Scottish artist, sang for us, and we had Scottish country dancing. And I think Black and White Whiskey sponsored the bar for us that night, so there was a fair night had by all. The next morning, we got up early and we cleared the tables away from the marquee and turned it into a church. And we had a church service in there in commemoration of Donald J. McDonald of Castleton. And this was performed by Reverend Hudson, Clandonald USA Padre. We had a lovely day, and Bunty McDonald, Donald J.'s wife, sat in the front seat and cried her eyes out. It was a lovely time. At the back end behind Castle, we had a serious flood problem at the beginning, and we found there was like an underwater stream coming out just in a corner where there had been a retaining wall, but it had collapsed because of the pressure of the water and the bank on it. So what we had to do was we had to dig a trench and put a drain in, take it all the way from the corner of the castle wall all the way down to the stream so that we could relieve that pressure. Having done that, we decided that the retaining wall was so unstable that we took that down, and we took some of the weight out of the area and started to build the present retaining wall with the castellations. We didn't have enough stone for it. We had to search all over the estate to find buildings that had fallen down, and we just steal the stone and off we'd go with it. In order to get the work done, we got a volunteer group to come in, led by a fellow, I've forgotten his name now, but really determined to finish this wall. The volunteer group were in for about 3 weeks and did maybe about half of the wall. He stayed on his own, and with a little help from the gardeners at that time, they finished the whole project. It's something they were very proud of, because it fits into the way the garden should have had a retaining wall. And I'm sure there's many people who come here and say, oh, look at that old wall that's been here for thousands of years or something like that. But it hasn't. It's only been here 20 years at the most. But it's a very popular spot. And now the garden itself, in front of the wall, is one of the nicest spots in the garden. Part of the lawn that is in front of the castellated wall was totally surrounded in rhododendron when I first arrived here. And we moved in and at one point said, okay, we're going to start clearing the rhododendron. The rhododendron clears quite easily once you start hacking it away. And it burns beautifully, so you can get rid of it quickly. But as we get in deeper into the rhododendrons, we were finding things like empty champagne bottles, pram wheels, all kinds of stuff, because obviously people used it as a dumping ground at one point. However, once we had cleared all that away and cleared all the rhododendron away, we were left with about 7 or 8 major tree stumps. I'm talking about with a diameter of maybe 5 or 6 feet, some of them. Started to dig them out, but the tap roots on them were so difficult that we couldn't get them out. So I contacted a fellow in the roads department who had the ability to use dynamite, and he came in and he said yes, he would do it for us. So we drilled the holes and stuck in dynamite in and cordoned off the gardens. There was visitors around at the time anyway, and blew up the first stump, and it went up about 100 feet into the air, spinning like a prop, and then dropped down again. All the people applauded, you know. So the next day we did another one, and by the end of the week we had got rid of every one of them. But then the bus drivers were coming back saying, "Are you blowing up any stumps today?" because they thought it was such a great attraction. However, we managed to clear it, level it, and now it's like a bowling green out there. One of the projects that was put forward by the trustees was the establishment of self-catering cottages. I located this site above Glendonald Centre. It's a little bit along the road. When Ellis McDonald came over, we climbed the hill together, and when he saw the view from it, he said, "This must be the place." So we put 6 self-catering cottages in this site. They achieved the Scottish Tourist Board 5 Crown Deluxe, with virtually 100% occupancy in July and August, and up to 75% in the shoulder months of May, June and September. This project has greatly helped to keep the running costs of the Trust under control. They've been one of the best sources of income to the Glendonald Lands Trust over the years, continue to be, providing we keep upkeep. There is a problem with having to rotate furnishings year over year, but so far we've managed to do it, and we hope that that will continue. One day in my many patrols around the garden, I came along this path where it was just overgrown with rhododendron. And when I got along to this point, I finally felt this awful smell. There was a real smell. I thought, what is that? So I dug my way through the jungle of rhododendron and found a dead sheep. I don't know how long I'd been lying there, but this dead sheep is there, and that's what was causing the problem. But while I was looking at this dead sheep, I became aware of the fact I could hear water running. and pushed on a bit further and found that there was a stream coming down there with a slight waterfall, and that became a priority job to clear all the rhododendrons away so that we could expose the little run of water, and we built a bridge across it. And Duncan McInnes, who was the countryside ranger at the time, had a book of bridges that could be built. They built the bridge over there, and now it's one of these focal points that people like to enjoy, to stand there and to hear the sound of running water, which is wonderful. started here, the present offices, well, the offices then, they were there in place. They'd had a nice restaurant downstairs with a little museum area and a very nice gift shop. Actually, they'd done very well at that particular point, but we only had, I think, 3 members of staff at that time. One was in the shop, one was in the restaurant, one was in the gardens. When I went into the offices, it was obviously empty, nothing in the desk drawers, nothing on the desk, and there was a bookshelf with 7 books on it. And I can't remember all of the names, but they weren't really related to Clandonald history, but one of them I knew was about raising pigs, which I didn't think I was here to do. But anyway, we started off saying, what are we going to do? Where are we going to start? And there's so many places we started. One of the projects that the trustees had asked me to take on was expand the library. With that in mind, I had a budget to go out and buy books. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough. At the time we were buying books, you could buy a book, a set of 3 volumes of Clandonald for maybe £200. Now they're £500. In fact, some cases I see them advertised at £750. We started to buy the books. We got a collection given to us from Glencoe Foundation. They had acquired it from Harry Matthews, who's a Clandonald trustee. This came over and it was a huge number of boxes. So then we had a problem. We had to build some bookcases to put the books on. We filled up my office with bookcases, and then we had to fill a part of the hallway leading into the Somerled apartment with more bookcases. Then we bought a Jacobite collection from Donald McCormick, the antiquarian book dealer in Edinburgh. Pretty soon, I didn't have a library in an office anymore. I had a desk in the library. We said, we've got to do something about this. As it happened, the Dowager Lady McDonald died, and we bought Armadale House. And we had to convert the inside of the Armadale House to a museum and library. And we had genealogical records. But the place was just overflowing, and we had to move all into Armadale House. And that was our first effort, to have a separate location for the library, the archives, and the museum. In 1984, the introduction of glass cases housing historic artifacts supported by a headship of the Gale exhibition and a Sea Kingdom audiovisual program broke new ground in that we focused on the lordship of the Isles, leading the visitor through the glory days of the clans, when people lived peacefully and the arts and traditions flourished. Of course, there was a downfall, a series of lost causes, and ultimately the break-up and dispersal of the clans. These events we cover too, but our emphasis was to show that a sophisticated culture thrived in the Highlands and Islands during the lordship. The museum exhibition achieved a runner-up award in the Scottish Museum of the Year Awards in 1986. Since 1979, we have been actively collecting books, papers, maps and prints which contain information on the Highlands and Islands. In 1982, we purchased the McDonald estate papers and spent close to 3 years cataloguing them in order to produce an accurate account of every paper in the collection. In 1988, we were lent from the USA an extensive library and collection of historic papers and prints, all in Scottish themes, and shortly thereafter purchased a rare and valuable collection of Jacobite material. The study centre is now being well used by scholars, researchers and tourists alike. The library received a Research Facility Award at the Scottish Museum of the Year Awards in 1991. In 1997, we devised a project to ask for money from the lottery fund, and we were looking for £3.5 million to restore the castle to our museum and our study centre. We were close to getting the grant. They were up here and they were very impressed with our collections, but they felt that we were showing the wrong priority. We were showing the fact that the museum collection and the archive, and they felt it should be the other way around, the archive and the museum collection. Well, we knew at that time that Miss Cunningham, who had this wonderful Glengarry collection, had promised it to us. And in anticipation of this, we wanted to have a place for it, but that wasn't good enough for them. They wanted this archive first. And at that point, the trustees had decided that we'd spent enough money in chasing after this and we weren't going to change it. So as a result, the whole thing never got anyplace. In the year 2000 or 2001, they started planning to build the present museum and archive. That came about because of the unfortunate fact that Miss Cunningham died, and we had her collection now. She also left an endowment, which was about £1 million. Glencoe Foundation put together some more money, and I have no idea what the final cost of the new museum was, but they built a new museum. I would be very proud of it, any Clandonald member, very proud of what's in there. We got a second prize of the Museum of the Year, but we also got a cheque for £750. So I went out and bought a microfiche reader, and then we managed to buy all of the microfiche of the record office, the Register House in Edinburgh, so that we were able to check genealogy from a source on Skye. We hired John McDonald, Johnny Ivy, who was the local Shenachie. He knew everything about all the families all round about. And of course we gave him this machine and it just was magic. It was a perfect formula. John knew that machine backwards. When people come in and said, I belong to such and such a McDonald, John pinpointed them immediately. And one time a family came in and said, whatever McDonald they belonged to, John said, wait a minute, and went into the library. And he came out with this book and opened up the book and said to the girl, that's your great-great-grandfather. I've seen him do that so many times and see the people break down in tears at seeing a picture of someone they thought disappeared in time. Local people use it. Some rustic use it. It's been one of the best things that we did here. One thing that we have at Armadale, and we've had for many, many years, is the local staff are like family. We hired as many local people as we could, and sometimes they hired their children during the school break to be summer waitresses, and you knew everybody by first name and knew their family. And once you settled into the Armadale Slate area, you have to get to know everybody. And then we decided, I'm saying we as a trust, decided that we needed to do more for the local community. Activities like Croftus Fair, where we had stalls that sold vegetables, and we had competitions about who could grow the biggest tomato or who could grow the biggest turnip. And then we had sheepdog demonstrations at the Croftus Day. Plus we had five-a-side football, tugs of war, all kinds of things. It was very popular. We did this year after year. And we did introduce sheepdog trials. And they were held out on the farm road towards Tarskavig. There were people coming with sheepdogs from all over Scotland to compete. We had lovely trophies, wonderful trophies. I really think that that's something that the community warmed to, because we had great crowds, spectators, and we had a marquee up, and we sold sandwiches and stuff like that. It really was a great day. It's something I would recommend they try to look at doing again. One of the challenges we had was the general belief in the local community that Clandonald Land Trust, Clandonald Visitor Centre, whatever we were going to call what we were doing, was a white elephant, and it would never work. We had to prove that was going to work. Part of that development was staff development. We had to make sure that our staff were happy, they were dressed properly, and that the place looked as if it was spick and span. As an old airport manager, my job was to walk through an airport terminal building every day. And you know what like that is? Clean is clean. That was the attitude I brought to it, and I had to make sure that the staff had the same idea. We got involved in an initiative called Investors in People. That meant that you were committed to training your staff, keeping your staff informed of all the things that you were planning to do, getting their opinions, making them part of the decision-making process, and in general uplifting their morale. Now we have such lovely people living around the Clan area in the Crofting townships that the easy part is so nice to work with nice people and make them better. And we were able to do that. The feeling in the community was that it was part of the community, and they were part of the family of Clandonald. They were the people that could come in and make it work, and they were proud of what they did. And they were proud of the fact that we were winning trophies, awards for quality work. We got them from the Scottish Tourist Board, we got them from museum people, we got them from plasterers. Anything that was going on, we entered for it. I would say 9 times out of 10, we came away with something. This made them so proud. And of course, at any particular award ceremony, I didn't always want to be the guy going there to pick up the award and get the pictures taken. So I would take some of the managers down with me and let them do it. We had some great times picking up these awards. We built a reputation in the Highlands. As we look back on the growth of the Clandonald Land Trust since its inception in 1972, I'm sure the founders of the organisation would be impressed at just how far their early dreams have been realised. The original trust deed outlined as its first objective to erect and maintain a clan museum on the clan lands in the Isle of Skye for the purpose of fostering clan sentiment and interest and the encouragement of education of members of the clan and the general public in the history of the Highland clans and Clandonald in particular, and the collection and the preservation of records and traditions and objects of historic interest bearing on the history of Clandonald. A tall order, you might feel, but if we look at the Clandonald Visitor Centre today, we can see just how far the Trust has progressed. All of the achievements to date would not have been possible without the tremendous financial support of the Glencoe Foundation Inc. USA. With the additional help of the Clandonald Foundation Inc. USA, the Highlands and Islands Enterprise, Scottish Natural Heritage, Skye and Loch's Local Enterprise Company, the Scottish Museums Council, the Local Museum Purchase Fund, and the National Heritage Memorial Fund, and several other grant-giving organizations. We also must thank and recognize the contribution of Miss Cunningham, who not only left us a wonderful collection of Glengarry relics, but also left us a huge legacy, which was able to fund the building of the new museum. This, plus the team spirit and professionalism of our staff, has made the Clandonald Visitor Centre a place that all members of the clan can be proud of. A lot has been done. There's still a lot to do. Your help in continuing to support the work is greatly appreciated. Thank you. When you come to Skye, you'll find that you can fall in love with it in 2 or 3 days, particularly if the weather is glorious. But if you work here for 20 years, you really fall in love with it. You really get to know it. You really find places of special beauty. And when you leave, you have to come back every so often to recharge your battery and look at these things again. As we sit at the top of the Castle Road here, looking over Neudert, the sun is shining, lovely fluffy clouds in the sky, there's birds chirping, birds flying about, and you just don't see this in the city. You have to come to Skye to see it. And I recommend that you do come and see it, because it is unforgettable and beautiful.
Oh yes, I know my heart belongs to Scotland. Be it not how near or far we roam, yet still I hear the pipes a long way calling. Calling out to carry my soul back home. We are Scotland, Scotland, Scotland the brave. We are Scotland, Scotland, Scotland the brave. Far away. And when you hear again the pipes of Scotland, then you shall remember who you are. far. We are Scotland, Scotland, Scotland the great. We are Scotland, Scotland, Scotland the great. We are Scotland, Scotland, Scotland the great. Far away. Scotland, I can hear you calling me. Homeland, in my soul, call me. County Antrim to Ireland.